Okay, so I'm going to go over how to make an improved MadLib. Now the key to an improved MadLib is coming up with the scheme yourself before you start to code. And before, when I was trying to do that, I did not do that. It ended in a disaster. But just for a review, let's take a look at, this is the MadLib script as it exists on CodePen. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so remember, MadLib is a game where you type in some kind of random words and then the computer puts it together into a sentence. Okay, so noun, I'm going to say television. Adjective, I'm going to say, I don't know, green. Past tense verb, how about watched? Someone's name, oh, Clarence, the cat. Exclamation, get down. As in get down away from the TV, Clarence, you're in front of it. Okay, now I press the Libit button and it put the results down here. It says Clarence watched a green television, get down. Okay, that kind of almost makes sense, but it's still kind of lame. And this is also kind of lame because look, the response is down here, we can't even see it. So the very first thing I'm going to do here before I change the content is I'm going to move this div. This is a div in the HTML. JavaScript writes it in with whatever you put in here. I'm going to move it to the top. So I'm going to go into the HTML, and you can see here it's pretty simple. It's got a link to a style sheet right here. It's got a link to a fancy font. It has an H1 header, and then the forms. This is where you input all of the words, and then there's the button. This is what you click. This executes the MadLibs function in the JavaScript. The JavaScript is here. There's the MadLibs function. And then here where it says div ID equals story, this is where the output goes. So I'm going to cut that, and I'm going to put it here right after the H1 for MadLibs. Okay, now there's nothing in this div when we start, so it's going to be empty. It's going to seem to be invisible. All right, let's preview that again. A noun, let's call it a cat. An adjective, how about a fat cat? A verb, purred. Someone's name, pistachio. He's a cat. How soft. Libit. Oh, look. Now look. Our response, our payoff is up here. Okay, all we had to do was move that one div. It's still weird though. Pistachio purred, a fat cat, how soft. Blah. Okay. So I'm going to change this around, and what I decided to do is I was going to use Old MacDonald, you know that nursery rhyme, Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on his farm he had some animal, E-I-E-I-O, with a bark bark here and bark bark there, here a bark, there a bark, everywhere a bark bark. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. Okay, so I'm going to replace these with MadLibs for Old MacDonald. So I'm probably going to start, I'm going to rearrange this a little bit. So I'm going to start here first. So the first one, I'm going to erase this. It says give each input an ID. I'm going to erase that. So Old MacDonald, so I'm going to ask for the adjective first. So you can be Old MacDonald, you can be Fat MacDonald, you can be Green MacDonald, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to ask for that first, and I'm going to give it an ID, adjective, and I'm only giving it that ID. I could call it anything. I could call it, my favorite cat's name is Pistachio, for example, but you want to name it something after what it does. However, you can't have two IDs with the same name on the same page. So the next one, say Old MacDonald had a possession, had a noun, a possession. Okay, so here I'm going to change this one to noun. And again, this doesn't really change the script. I'm just changing the name to make it easier for me as a human to understand what's going on. Old MacDonald had a noun, E-I-E-I-O, and on his noun he had a animal. Animal. So you can put an animal in here. So we're going to call this one animal. E-I-E-I-O. Now we're going to make an animal sound here. Animal sound. And we'll call this sound. So Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on his farm he had a something, E-I-E-I-O. Had an animal. Had a farm, animal. Okay, we don't need this one. Right. Okay, but because I've changed these, I only have 4 of them now, I have to change them in the script. Because what it's going to do is the script, MadLibs, it's going to collect whatever I put into this form, what I put in here, what I put in here, what I put in here. So I have to make sure that I'm collecting adjective, noun, animal, and sound. So let's go to the script. Okay, story div. So here's the MadLibs. Okay, and this is var story div. So story div is this right here. It's this. So story div, document get element by ID story. So this is where we're going to put our result. Var name, document get element by ID name.value. So that's what the user typed into. So the first one is adjective. We're just going to put adjective there. That means whatever the user put in there. Now the next one is noun. Okay, so I'm going to change this to noun. And the next one is animal. And so this is animal. And the next one is sound. So I'm going to change this to, well, actually it's this one, sound. Okay, we don't have a 5th one, so I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, once I've changed all of these to the proper ID that is on the HTML, I have a couple more steps to do. First of all, I'm giving each of these are all variable names. So they kind of reflect what went before. So I want to change them. So instead of calling this name, I'm going to call it adjective. Okay, and instead of calling this adjective, I'm going to call it noun. Instead of calling this noun, I'm going to call it animal. And instead of calling this exclamation, I'm going to call it sound. So there's no problem in having an ID with the same name as a variable. That's perfectly okay. Okay, so now I'm going to try to substitute these for what's in here. It's not going to make any sense, but it will get us a little bit closer to our Old MacDonald. So when I reference this, I'm referencing the variable names. I'm not referencing the ID names. So here, I'm going to change this to adjective. And then the next one is noun. And the next one is animal. And the next one is sound. And we don't have a 5th one, so we'll just put sound again. Okay, now let me preview that. Okay, so the adjective will have a fat, possession, television, animal, cat, animal sound will have a purr. Fat television, a cat, purr, purr. Okay, nonsensical, but now we at least have the elements to create our Old MacDonald lyric. Okay, so to make this into an old MacDonald lyric. I'm going to edit this. It's going to be very ugly. But I'm going to start. And so the first thing I'm going to put is, so we use the word adjective instead of the word old. So adjective, and the next one, MacDonald had a, what's the next one, noun. Oh, I'm going to start this with a P. I'm sorry. Okay. So the stuff in quotes is HTML and text that is not the variable. The stuff in white is the variable text. So paragraph, old MacDonald had a, the next one is a noun, and then I believe it's E-I-E-I-O, E-I-E-I-O. Okay, we'll end our paragraph there. Okay, make a new paragraph. And on his, this is noun, on his farm, he had a, this is where the animal comes in, animal, and then we're going to have a comma, okay, and then a paragraph, close paragraph, and then a new paragraph, E-I-E-I-O. I never knew what that meant, E-I-E-I-O. And then a new paragraph with a, there's a sound, and a space, and sound, and here, and a sound, and a, oops, sorry, sound there. A sound here, and a sound there. Comma, close paragraph, open paragraph, E-I-E-I-O. Okay, let's just get that far. Okay, let's see if that works. So if this works, we're going to start a paragraph. We're going to use our adjective. Then MacDonald had a noun, and then E-I-E-I-O, and then close paragraph, open paragraph. And on his noun, he had a animal, comma, paragraph, E-I-E-I-O, paragraph, with a sound, here, and a sound, oops, sound, with a sound, this would just be a blank, sound there, E-I-E-I-O. Oh, there's a little bit more. Let's try this. Let's see if it works. Yep. It's possible we messed something up, but it looks right. Okay. So when it does this, sometimes it's, okay, here we go, adjective. We'll say old, a noun, he had a farm, animal, he had a dog, animal sound will be woof. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and on his farm he had a dog, E-I-E-I-O, with a woof woof here and a woof woof there, E-I-E-I-O. Okay, all right, that's more like it. So we could go on. The last part of this goes, here a woof, there a woof, everywhere a woof woof. Okay. So another thing I might want to do is I might want to separate this from the data entry part. So in the style sheet, I could put this on a different color background. I could give it some padding. I could change the font. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Just make it look a little bit nicer. It's not going to be perfect, but we'll be okay. Okay, so the place where the text is showing up is the ID called story. And if we go back to the HTML, we see it's there at story. Okay, so I'm going to change this font size from 24 pixels to 2M. Padding top, I'm just going to set padding to 10%. Font family, I don't know if Courier, let's try putting this in a different, sorry. There might be an issue with this, it might not work, but we can try it. We don't really need to set the line height. Oh, but we could just set the background color. Now I think we're going to get the fancy font. I'll tell you why in a minute. Background color. We'll make it something not too, like a light blue, or maybe this dark sea green. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, the first thing we notice is we have a sea of this dark sea green at the top. And we don't really want to see this in the beginning. We want it to appear at the end when we're done. So the reason why it's here is because we set the padding to 10%. So even though we don't have anything in here, we have some padding. So it's going to show us an empty box with just 10% of padding. So what we can do to fix this is we can set this to be invisible when we start our MadLib. So we're going to do this in two ways. We're going to go into the story ID style and set the display to none. So let's do that first. So in here, we're going to say display none. And what that's going to do, it's going to make it disappear at the beginning, which is what we want. But then we want it to reappear at the end. So to do that, we need to add some JavaScript. So we're going to say get element by ID, document, get element by ID, story, dot style, dot display equals quote block. That's going to make it appear. Now, I use document gets element by ID story. Remember, they actually put this phrase, I could have used this, into a variable called story div. So I could have replaced all of this with story div dot style dot display equal block. It's the same thing. Okay. All right, let's see if it works. Okay, so it's not there. So adjective, we'll call it cranky. A possession, car. Animal, we'll call it an alley cat. And a sound is a yowl. Oh, very nice. Cranky McDonald had a car, E-I-E-I-O, and on this car he had an alley cat. With a yow yow here and a yow yow there, E-I-E-I-O. Okay. All right. So notice though that so this worked. Our story div appeared after we pressed the button, so the JavaScript worked. This is still in that funny font though. Let me show you why that is. If I go to the style sheet, the people who made this, they used a very special character called the asterisk. And what the asterisk does is it says apply this style to all of the styles that are on this page, and it's going to override anything else that might be here. So I'm going to get rid of this. This is the Fugaz one. I'm going to get rid of the font size as well. Okay. Oh, and notice here we have a red line because they didn't put anything in here. Okay. Now, if we try it again, okay, yeah, this is no longer in Fugaz 1. We can go back and change that. An adjective, we'll call it old. A possession, a book. An animal, a parakeet. And a sound, a squawk. Old MacDonald had a book, E-I-E-I-O, and on his book he had a parakeet. The squawk squawk here and a squawk squawk there, E-I-E-I-O. Okay. All right. So you can follow the same formula, make changes to the places where you enter the words, and then make changes to the output. And also, for the love of God, make changes to the style, because this is really not a lovely project. But anyhow, that's how I modified the MadLib. And if you want to do that, you can do it.